So anyway, I says to Mabel, I says, oh, I'll finish that in a minute.
Oh, David. I know you can hear us. David, will you do your exercises?
Red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather.
Thank you, David.
Hey everyone, it's the Student Data Privacy Show.
David has an unusual amount of energy this morning, so I want to apologize in advance. We had to keep the microphone off, but thank you for joining us today. In fact, David, I'm going to let you, let's see, talk about our agenda. You're going to be talking about the first few items.
Yes. So, the first items, we want to talk about Data Governance Plan's Metadata Dictionary help. Then we'll talk about public reporting expectations for October 1, 2018. Then I guess you'll talk about the higher education outreach. We'll talk about some of the things that we have coming down the pipe in probably around July. And there will be a de-identification training this month, maybe. So with that in mind, we'll move to the next slide, if it will be so gracious. Okay, so many of you might be aware, we spent a good portion of April going out to regional service centers, initially with the idea of helping with the metadata dictionary, presenting some ideas we had for 2018. For the most part, they really began to turn into kind of feedback sessions that we found to be incredibly useful. And so based on that, we've got a couple of things we would like to propose regarding data governance plans and the metadata dictionary. But first, I want to show this slide.
See their video.
Because this is kind of the idea that came out of that, was this inverted pyramid of when it comes to data privacy, who should be doing the majority of the work. And our feeling was, you know, like USBE, we should be doing as much of it as we possibly can. Try and get as much of it done for you, and then pass what little bit is left for you to complete.
Not little bit.
Well, I mean, you know, we don't know exactly how much it'll be. Honestly, even like we could expand that out. USPE needs to be doing a lot to help you. So with that said, with data governance plans. So in our episode last month, we said that we would come up with some templates, a variety of templates, some for smaller schools, some for larger schools, for data governance plans. And I developed a template that basically what I did was I went through FERPA, I went through the Student Data Protection Act, I went through R277487, which is the board rule related to student data confidentiality, and basically put together a bare bones plan that said, look, everything that it says in the law, we will do. And it occurred to me where it's like, well, like, do you really need a template right now? Because a lot of you already created a plan, and Senate Bill 207 did require some extra things, but in a lot of cases, you already had those things in your plans. So basically he said, well, maybe let's take this a slightly different way. So here's what I was proposing. So in cases where we did not get a plan, I would like to do what I'm calling essentially a policy review pilot. So if we did not get a plan, you get a phone call first, kind of to see, like, because I know in a lot of cases, it is a very time-consuming process to get such a plan approved by your board. We were talking with Kevin from Miller District yesterday, and, you know, he says, like, they've had stuff, it's just been taking months because their board insists on taking their precious time to get these kinds of things done. We completely understand that. We don't want to duplicate any work that's already been done. So if we have not yet received a plan, we're going to want to kind of figure out where you're at. And then with that idea where it's like, well, you know, we can do quite a bit. And I actually find it incredibly educational to understand how your districts work. So I've already done this with a couple of LEAs. I just haven't contacted them yet to let them know I've done this. But I've gone through and reviewed all their existing policies. Certainly to give credit where possible, because in many cases, even though we didn't receive a plan, maybe a couple years ago, you passed policies when the Student Data Protection Act originally came out, or maybe even before then, you've had other policies in place. So trying to see what you have, and then based on that, giving a list of must-dos, so things that have to be in there in order to meet the requirements of the law, but then also possibly recommendations based on things that I see. And what I would like to do, where impossible, is, I could just email you that list and say you may use it. I believe it's probably most beneficial, though, and again, I'm not sure how realistic this will be with your schedule and certainly with our schedules, because we do have a lot of other things we are working on. But ideally, what we would like is to be able to schedule a time with the data manager, the superintendent or school director, possibly the business manager, to kind of share and report, here's our must-dos, here's our recommendations, be able to answer questions. Again, this wouldn't be a necessary step, but it's something we would like to do. We'd like to provide, if I review all these policies, be able to provide what I found in person, be able to answer any questions. And again, the idea for this was just for those 20 or so LEAs that did not give us anything. For those that did give us something, I think instead of giving you like, here's a different, possibly better written model data governance plan, for most of you, I have gone through and looked at your data governance plans, and probably by middle of the month, I'm just going to send a letter that says, if I were to do the October 1 check this year, based on the new requirements of Senate Bill 207, here's what you would get. So, and honestly, a lot of you, it's just like, you know what, this is fine. You could maybe clear this up, but good enough. And in some cases, if you're missing elements, I'll inform you there. So, and in that case, I can also then provide the template and say, like, look at this language here. You could just borrow that, or you could adapt it however you like. That seemed to make more sense to me than giving you a whole new template when you already have most of the work done in the majority of cases, to just tell you you've got the work done, it'll be good by October, or you're most of the way there. We can do a couple extra things to get it complete by October. So that is what I am currently doing with data governance plans. Now, a lot of our conversations when we went out to the regional service centers related to the Metadata Dictionary. And we recognize that this, honestly, in terms of like the time I would like LEAs to spend on doing data privacy things, I don't think that this should be like top of the list of what you spend time doing, but it seems like it's very high up there because it's a very time-consuming task. And this is a lot of the feedback we've gotten. We've gotten since pretty much day one with the Metadata Dictionary. It wasn't just at these times going out to the regional service centers. We have heard so much that this is so much time consuming, and we're not even sure that anything we're putting in is accurate. So what is the point of putting in all this time just to have bad information? How is this valuable to anyone? So we went back and looked at the changes to the definition of metadata dictionary that were passed in Senate Bill 207. And this is, I put kind of headings there to kind of make it clear where I'm going with this. We noticed that the definition of metadata dictionary essentially looks like it just requires two lists, a data elements list and a recipients list. And under that recipients list, you'll notice that it says there needs to explain the purpose for the sharing, the justification, so whether it's federal, state law, or local directive, and how the sharing is permitted under federal or state law. And one major thing that is missing there that is we have been expecting and is built into the tool is for each recipient connecting that to the data elements list. You've probably seen this if you've been in the tool, right? So you put in all that first information, and then you're supposed to put in all of the data elements. And the feedback we've generally gotten is that this is the most time-consuming part. And it's incredibly difficult to get all that information. Particularly when it's something that a teacher is using in a classroom. I think if it's something you have a contract with from a vendor, so that's like at the district level, it's more likely that you have that information. But like the example I give is just think of all the data elements that you share with Facebook or another similar kind of application. It's very easy to miss some when you don't have that comprehensive list that has been negotiated with the vendor. And even as I just start to think where it's like, oh yeah, it's like, I mean, Facebook asks like lots of personal stuff like your relationship status, ask what your job is, maybe like your past work experience, you can give Facebook that. Every time you click like, it would be, I think, challenging and time consuming to create that entire list. And as we look at what the law specifically says, it doesn't say that these two need to be connected. So what we proposed, and News did not get this proposal. They, when we spoke with News, a lot of their feedback helped inform this proposal. We have already shared this with SCDC, and they seem to react very positively because they recognize that this would save a lot of time. The basic proposal would be that for the October 1, when we review all of your things to be compliant with board rule and the Student Data Protection Act, that we would not expect you in every case to list out all the data elements for every data recipient. We intend, currently based on our discussions, the idea would be it would still be there. It would be up to you. Like if it's too hard for you to get and you just simply want to include like the list of the vendors, that would be considered fine. So there would, the minimal requirement would be 2 lists, one that said, here's the data elements we share, and another list of vendors. The 2 would not necessarily have to be connected. And why include it if it's not required? And
because it was written differently last year. It was written that they were more connected, and this year they're separated. And so we developed it the best we could the way it was written last year, because it was developed last year. But this year, with the new language and with the realization of the burden, it is no longer required. However, because it's already developed to have data elements listed by vendor, that functionality we would like to at least keep. I think at the state level, we would like to keep that functionality, but that doesn't mean that it is necessary. So we'll be working with our developer. We'll most likely have to redo the lovely Metadata Dictionary training video.
That was going to happen anyway.
and so I think this is helpful as far as meeting the transparency requirements. I don't know if this takes away any transparency, but I think you'll get to recordation today or not.
I'm not going to bring that up yet.
Okay.
But also kind of the idea was, because originally we were like, let's just completely pull them apart. One reason I was thinking why we don't necessarily want to do that is because some of you have already put that work in. So they're already there. There's also, again, the recognition, like Whitney was saying, at USBE, that's very easy for us to get that information because generally the exact terms of data elements, those are negotiated. So we're fine with maintaining that level, even though the law does not appear right now to require that high of a level. So the idea was, it's like, well, we can just keep the functionality in, or I guess we're still kind of working out the kinks. But the realization is that based on the way the law is currently written, 2 separate lists where the elements and the vendors are not necessarily connected is probably okay.
I would also say that one question we had at SCDC was, this is how the law is written now. What about next year? Will it all of a sudden, revert to the way we have it developed now? And so there is a little bit of a concern that would happen. We would advocate for that not to happen, I would say, but we do not make laws.
Yeah. Okay, so continuing along in that vein then, and with the idea that, USBE should be doing as much of the work as we can. So we're going to try to standardize the data elements list so this again was the idea where it's like, well, if they're just going to be 2 separate lists, let's just, provide that list for everyone, because again, we know that not everyone has necessarily created that list. Some have done very minimal work in the metadata dictionary thus far. So basically for every LEA, we would just kind of put in everything that's in Utrex, because we know that you are sharing that with us at least. And then anything else that you might be collecting and sharing, you would be able to fill that in. So again, if you were just going to take the route of, well, we aren't going to connect these 2, most of the work for the data elements list would be done for you. And then if it's a federal or state required one, so we know some people have gone in and done ACT, done SAGE, done whatever, and their lists are not necessarily consistent. If it's required by federal or state law, USBE should know the exact specifications. So that is another one we will just autofill for every LEA. And the idea again is it's like we will fill it for you, but you'll still be able to go in and modify it. So it is still your metadata dictionary. We're just trying again to get as much of the work done for you as we can.
What is this? If LEAs don't disclose PII data elements collected, shared on the metadata dictionary tool, are they required to disclose? It is required to use the metadata dictionary developed by the state to disclose, to have this disclosure.
Yeah,
And
that's in board rule.
That's in board rule.
So the idea would be we would try and fill in as much as what you're doing. Basically, if the state is making you do it, we will fill that in for every LEA. It'll just be the ones that are kind of at your level. And so those ones, that'll be where you'll kind of have the option to say like, well, you know, this is too time consuming for us or too difficult to get accurate of like what all our teachers are doing. So it's kind of the idea that it's like, you know, we'll just leave that up to you. But everything else will be put in, if it's federal or state level, by us. Yeah. And the next slide. Okay. So last year's standard, for those who weren't aware, because we recognize that like we just need to get started, even though within board rule and within the Student Data Protection Act, the expectation is that this be complete and 100% accurate. I think our realization was by October 1 that we weren't going to get there. So the standard we said was just simply, have you completed at least one? Have you gone in there? Have you done something? For next year, based on after we make all these changes, the standard that makes the most sense to me is to, instead of like looking for a specific number, because there's no way to know what the correct number is. And certainly that number might change throughout the year, even as teachers might, you know, sign on to new things. So basically what we would probably hope for is just a certified statement from your district on October 1 that says, we, you know, certify that we have completed the metadata dictionary accurately to the best of our knowledge, something along those lines. We may want to have some deeper detailed audits where we look into it, but I'm thinking that's going to focus a lot more on the process. So how you're getting the information, not the final product, and whether it's 100% accurate. I think the process is, we've heard little things about it. In some cases, the things we've heard about it are somewhat concerning, about you know, large numbers of IT staff being taken off of critical projects in order to go computer by computer, just to find out what teachers are doing. So I think we do want to know a little bit more about that, but for the most part, this is what we were thinking right now, is just for next year, you would just, I don't know if it would be clicking a box or if it would involve some kind of a signature electronically or something like that. Basically, to say that we have completed the metadata dictionary, you will just certify that you have. Yes, what is the question? Question is, I don't understand why this is being proposed if it's not required. Certified statement and audit. Okay, so the requirement is that you complete your metadata dictionary per what is said in the Student Data Protection Act. The Student Data Protection Act, as we are currently interpreting it, seems to say that you need to have a list of data recipients that needs to be comprehensive, and you need to have a list of data elements that needs to be comprehensive. Now, the problem is, in order for me as the auditor to determine whether you are in compliance, it would be incredibly challenging to determine what is meant by comprehensive. To be able, for example, to go through, I mean, should I be going through every single one of your computers to make sure that, you know, everything you're saying is accurate, that it is a comprehensive list? So the idea of the certified statement was simply, like I said, last year I just went and checked every single metadata dictionary by LEA just to see if there was one entry. Certified statement just basically means that you are saying that, yes, we did it. And if we get that statement, then we are going to say, okay, you know, we believe you, basically. In terms of a deeper audit, by that I mean that would probably be more informational, not required. Not everything that we hope to do is necessarily required of you. It's more so we can kind of know more about what is going on in order to, again, make things better, make things more accurate.
If you
And again, if anything is not required, we can't make you do it.
No problem.
We're hoping, trying to build, I think, good relationships. So that, if I were to ask, hey, that's what it would be. Like, can you maybe explain more? What is your process? How did you get your information in? Maybe ask for some evidence to take a look at. We could then be able to share that with other LEAs in cases where we see things that are really good. We could look at further using that to maybe further automate things to make it so that it works more smoothly. And if you just want to say, nope, we don't want to share that with you, ultimately, I can't make you do that. But we do very much appreciate all the feedback that we have gotten. And a lot of that has really led to some of these changes we are talking about right now.
We're also required in the Student Data Protection Act to submit an annual report on the compliance of the act. And it's hard to know whether the needle has moved in a number of these compliance requirements unless we ask, or unless we have full access to all of your computers and systems and policies. And so because we can't be that invasive, asking for this evidence is helpful for when we put together an annual report of the compliance metrics across the state.
All right, so with that said, that is what we have proposed, at least certainly for Metadata Dictionary for October 1. Now, I'm not sure at which point this proposal turns into this is the way it's definitely going to be. And so we are having some internal discussions, but basically we need to figure out on what day we're going to let you know for sure, yes, this is how it's going to work. So for the Metadata Dictionary, the expectation is do everything you can and then certify to us on October 1 that you believe it is accurate.
I think at the latest we would do that is in the August meeting, where we're going to be revising the board rule R277487 to reflect the changes in the last legislative session, and also to clarify some of the requirements of this evidence of compliance, that we might want to clarify that in board rule. So now's the time if you have comments about how that would go, or how we might better measure that compliance. Let us know. I think we have the feeling that compliance is a part of the job, but certainly not the focus. Our focus is very much on training, awareness, providing as much help to you all as possible, because we know that this is a huge lift. But part of what we do too is to know if our efforts are making a difference, if folks are improving their policies, their security, and their training to help with data privacy. So it's it's neat to see that things are improved, but we from our offices in Salt Lake can't know what every LEA is doing, and so once a year asking for this compliance evidence really helps measure our impact on what we're doing, to see if you're hearing us at all. Can you hear us? So yeah.
They can clearly hear us, at least right now. Microphones are working.
Okay, so what's the next?
And so with that said, again, just kind of a reminder. So the things we know we'll be looking for, at least by October 1, is designation of a data manager, which, again, may just be the same individual as last time around.
We had 100%
yes.
last year. 100%. That
we got a name. And again, there's the thing where it's like that the person that was named wasn't necessarily the right person, is what we have come to find. So, but we 100% gave us a name. And data governance plan being posted on your website, confirmation of having completed the training for teachers and staff that have access to student PII, copy of your IT security plan as mentioned in board rule, certifying that you have completed your metadata dictionary. And one thing that was in the Student Data Protection Act, but we did not request last October, but we are going to want to see evidence of for this October, is you're supposed to, at the beginning of the year, provide a collection notification. That is a comprehensive list of the data you collect and designating it as necessary or optional. And Senate Bill 207 added a new part to that regarding collecting parental consent for what is considered higher education outreach. Whitney is going to talk about that real quick.
Yeah. So David's correct. There is a request to have parents opt in to disclosing data to the Board of Regents. And I don't know if I have the list of data here, but it's essentially contact information, parent name, email, address, student name for students in grades 9 through 12. This right now is kind of connected to this collection notice. I don't think that's really where it belongs. So this is kind of our intention. We're hoping that we're able to have a list of students whose parents have opted in for us to disclose, and that we send that information based on probably the October 1 count. This would require, if we did this through the UTREX, would require SIS changes and development, which will not happen before October 1st of 2018. We understand that. So we believe that this first year will be more of a manual transfer. Next year, in 2019, we hope that this is developed in every SIS system, that you can have, this is how we envision it, parents registering their students are either registering them online or with paper. They are able to consent to the disclosure of the data. SIS flags the student as having parental consent, and on October 1st, we send that information. For this year, this is something that your registers will have to be aware of, that they should, when a student arrives, provide the parent with that opt-in paper or some kind of online system. And we're thinking for this next year, we would then ask you to send us through encrypted, probably move it, encrypted file transfer service, we call it, a list of students that we can disclose. Now, the purpose of this is not really for privacy. It actually has to do more with outreach for students to attend institutions of higher education. And so we're hoping you view this as a service for your students and
a little with privacy. I mean, well, I mean, so the idea was, for those who aren't aware, that so USHE tries to send information about higher education opportunities to students.
Everyone might know what
USHE is the higher ed, Utah system of higher education. And the privacy aspect came in that we are aware that last year at least, probably thanks to us.
Yeah.
So they had been in the habit of getting in touch with school districts and saying, hey, can you send us a list of students that's like with this information? And the school district said, no, USB says we can't share.
And they actually, USHE would request from some LEAs grade level, name, ACT score,
right, stuff beyond directory information,
reduced lunch status, a lot more, a lot more. And so we were happy to hear that some LEAs pushed back on this and said, why should we give this to you? It's and so this is a way to give it to USHE in actually a legal way,
right,
following FERPA.
So that's why it's in the Student Data Protection Act.
Exactly. So we'll give you more information on that, just so you know. The first year will look very different than the second year. We'll need to probably contact other folks about this. I'm sure you all aren't working on registering students necessarily. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Well,
should we have Greg say something?
Well,
Greg's kind of sleepy today.
We've got two things we're currently working on that will hopefully be available to you around July. One is we are working on a series of videos and modules related to educator relicensure. So this is the videos Greg and I are currently working on. We anticipate those being available around July. Now, the idea with these is in board rule, it says, so when an educator applies for relicensure, there's a certain number of little kind of modules they're supposed to complete. A new one is going to relate to data privacy, and that's what this is specifically for. However, we have also received a lot of requests from LEAs that they would like basically that kind of thing for their annual training. And so this will be available to you to use for that purpose. With that in mind, though, we very highly recommend that you don't, you're more than welcome to just simply use it as is and count it. But in a lot of cases, you know, our video is going to be very general, high level, is probably not going to address a lot of specific things to your LEA. And this is what we found when we have done in-person trainings, is certainly when we start talking about like data security best practices, your local policies may be different than what we are saying are the best practices, and that in many cases causes confusion. And so we find it best where, you know, you can use this for like the general stuff, but that you should still provide very specific training based on your local policies and your local way of doing things. And then we are also currently working on an LEA guidebook regarding everything you're supposed to do in order to make privacy happen. I don't know if you want to say more about that, Whitney, or?
Sure. The intended audience for the guidebook is you, the data manager, and we'll have a bunch of different sections to this. It's essentially, what do I have to do? How do I do it? And, you know, what are some best practices, ways that we can even move beyond just the basic compliance? And it would include the entire life cycle of data. So that would be collection, maintenance, disclosure, destruction, also how to train your folks on data privacy. There'll be a lot of, we're excited for it. So it'll come out like it says here in July. So we're going to be pretty busy the next few months.
Yeah. Okay, and speaking of trainings, so we've been mentioning this for a little while. So we have invited Michael Hawes, who is essentially the head of PTAC at the U.S. Department of Education. So that's the Privacy Technical Assistance Center, to come to Utah and give a training to us at USBE, but also some trainings that will be designated for LEAs on the topic of de-identifying data when you're doing any kind of public reporting or data sharing. Now, we scheduled it for May 16th and everything was a go. And this morning he sent us an email saying that he might have to give testimony at like Congress or before the president or something like that.
Something more important than us?
Yeah, apparently.
No.
So he said he would let us know. So for right now, if this is a training that interests you and you are able to come to the Salt Lake area, please just block off your calendar for the morning. We have the Utah State Office of Rehabilitation Service Center in West Salt Lake. We have it reserved in the morning of May 16th. We will let you know for sure if that meeting is not going to happen as soon as we know, because he said he would get back to us.
There's another thing you should know about PTAC is they do not allow us to record their presentations, and so unfortunately we will not be recording this. We do plan on, however, to have our data conference again probably in November, early November, and we would work around PTAC schedules so that they would be able to be both here and conducting a training in southern Utah as well.
All right, and that's all our slides. Greg, are there any noise in the chat?
Not anymore.
Okay. Well, thanks for spending a little of your morning with us.
We sure appreciate it.
And if you do have any other questions, feel free to call us, email us. Always try to be as responsive as we can.
Yeah.
And
we need a sign off.
we should. Stay classy,
Stay
Utah.
classy, Utah.
Stay classy, San Diego.